Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, it's Tuesday, April 21st, 2026, and I'm Candace Kelly, sitting in for Roland, who was on the beach taking some much-needed time off. He is celebrating his 25th wedding anniversary. Have fun, Roland, there. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Democratic Florida Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick resigned just hours before the House Ethics Committee was set to discuss potential sanctions against her following her conviction for multiple violations of campaign finance laws. The Justice Department is investigating the Southern Poverty Law Center in connection with a now-defunct program that used paid confidential informants to infiltrate white supremacist and other extremist groups. Virginians have less than an hour left to vote in the redistricting referendum. A Texas police officer has been relieved of her duties after a video of her racist rant went viral. Also, the former self-described supermayor of Illinois, Tiffany Henyard, will be allowed to continue her campaign for a Georgia County Commission seat as a Republican. We'll also continue to address the epidemic of fatal domestic violence by focusing on the anatomy of an abusive relationship. And in tonight's Shop Black Star Network segment, we're going to showcase a little magic with Afro Unicorn. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Florida Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick has resigned in the face of corruption charges. The news broke just minutes before today's House Ethics Committee was going to meet for a public hearing to determine a punishment for the third-term Democrat who was charged with stealing $5 million in COVID release funds. She released this statement on social media. "This was not a fair process. The Ethics Committee refused my new attorney's reasonable request for time to prepare my defense. By going forward with this process while criminal indictment is pending, the committee prevented me from defending myself. I will not stand and pretend that this has been anything other than a witch hunt. I simply cannot stand by and allow my due process rights to be trampled on and my good name to be tarnished. Rather than play these political games, I choose to step away so that I can devote my time to fighting for my neighbors in Florida's 20th district. I hereby resign from the 110th Congress effective immediately. But let me say this plainly. We should be very careful about the precedent we are setting. In this country, we do not punish people before due process is complete. We do not allow allegations alone override the will of the people. That is a dangerous path, and one that should concern every American, regardless of party. To my constituents, it has been the honor of my life fighting for you in the U.S. House of Representatives, And thank you for standing with me and fighting alongside me. This fight is far from over. House Ethics Chair Michael Guest addressed her claims after reading her resignation letter in the record at today's hearing.
The Committee on Ethics will come to order. Before we begin, I would like to read a letter into the record. This letter is dated today, April 21st, 2026. It is addressed to the Honorable Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. The letter reads, "Dear Mr. Speaker, I hereby resign my office from the 119th Congress as representative from Florida's 20th Congressional District, effective Tuesday, April 21st, 2026, 1:30 p.m. It has been an honor of my lifetime to serve the people of my district, and I remain proud of the work we have accomplished on behalf of our communities. After careful reflection and prayer, I have concluded that it is in my best interest and the interest of my constituents and the institution that I step aside at this time. I remain committed to supporting a smooth transition and ensuring continuity of service for the district. Signed, sincerely, Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick, Member of Congress." In light of Ms. McCormick's resignation earlier today, the Committee on Ethics has now lost jurisdiction in this matter. There will not be a sanctions hearing. I would like to thank the committee staff who are with us today for their 2.5 years of hard work in this matter. I will tell you that the committee has worked diligently to investigate this matter, that this was not a rush to judgment as some would claim, that this was a very deliberate process to gather information into allegations that were extremely serious and extremely complicated. There were multiple witnesses that were spoken to over a 2-year period. There were tens of thousands of documents that were subpoenaed, gathered, and reviewed. And throughout this process, Ms. McCormick, who has now resigned from Congress, had multiple ample opportunities to present exculpatory evidence to the committee and to address the committee both by way of a voluntary statement and then also to comply with the subpoena that was issued in this case. So I would like to thank the staff. I would like to thank the investigative subcommittee that worked so hard on this matter.
All right, well, meanwhile, the Congressional Black Caucus, they released this statement. The Congressional Black Caucus recognizes the service of our colleague, Representative Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick. She came to Congress with a deep commitment to her community and determination to serve the people of South Florida, making history as the first Haitian American Democrat elected to Congress. In doing so, she helped broaden representation and brought visibility to the experience and aspirations of Haitian Americans and the broader Caribbean diaspora. During her time in office, she worked to uplift her constituents and elevate issues impacting underserved communities at home and abroad. Her voice and perspective contributed to the ongoing effort to ensure that Congress reflects the people it serves. We extend our appreciation for her service and offer our prayers for her family. We wish them strength and peace in the days ahead. All right, well, I am joined by my panelists right now. First, we have Dr. Larry J. Walker. He's an associate professor at the University of Central Florida. Also joining me, Patrick D. Schaefer. He is a political philosopher and public scholar. I want to thank you both for being with us today. I want to start with you first, Dr. Walker. It seems to me that there was an effort by the Congresswoman to say, we need more time in order to carry this out. Not only that, but we deserve a little bit of due process. What do you think about her arguments?
Yeah, I think that her argument falls on deaf ears, and there are a couple of reasons for that. So I can speak to the ethics process as, have worked as a senior staffer on Capitol Hill for a number of years and see many members, including some members of the CBC, go through various ethics challenges. And as the chairman noted, tens of thousands of documents, she's given ample opportunity to testify or offer counter evidence based on the allegations from the Department of Justice and the millions of dollars they suggested that she is stolen. So it really is unfortunate, I have to note, in terms of not only being a member of the CBC, but the fact of the matter, what Haitian Americans are dealing with right now with protective status in terms of the attacks, and that she won't be there to represent them. The other thing I want to note is related to this issue is we don't know when Governor DeSantis is going to call for a special election. So this is an unfortunate issue all around. I'm glad she resigned because she was likely to be expelled by Congress, and you do not want that to happen.
Right. You certainly don't want that to happen, Patrick. But when we think about due process and the claims that she is making, what she is saying is that, yes, there's a criminal investigation that's going on, but that hasn't been adjudicated. I'm not guilty. So why are you doing this to me now?
Yeah, and I think on the... No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I think that there was just a technical glitch.
No, I think on the premise of that she is innocent, then I think she should have been able to have her day in court if she needed more time, because I think one of the reasons that she said is that she changed lawyers and that they needed more time. I think that for the Democrats, this came at the way wrong moment. And I think that she should have been able to have her day in court. If she is innocent, as she says she was, and avoidance is not full accountability. And I think that's what's missing in this process.
Dr. Walker, you touched upon something, and that was this, that, what she's saying really might be falling upon deaf ears, because in terms of the witnesses that they interviewed, the investigation and all the evidence, and the $5 million that is missing in action, she probably had what they call bad facts at the end of the day.
The bottom line is, like you hit on the details of the details. And I think I have to note in terms of how the ethics committee works for those who are watching, you do not, you don't have to go to trial being convicted for the ethics committee to look at various issues. We've seen that just in the last couple of years. A number of members of Congress, unfortunately, have come and currently and in the past have, gone through the ethics committee process. And in many cases, those individuals, similarly we saw today, have resigned. But the reality is that if anyone who's paid very close attention, like myself, to this particular case, is that she's facing very serious allegations. And, this is why she was going up for expulsion. And look, as a former CBC staffer, it breaks my heart to see this situation, particularly, like I said, is a proud, she's a proud Haitian American. But the reality is that she got caught. And the ethics committee, in terms of, like I said, you do not have to go to trial and be convicted for ethics committee to take a look at some allegations. And this is a very unfortunate situation. But it's also a reminder that you have to be careful as a public official, particularly as a Black public official, when you are doing something that allows the state or federal government to look closely at you.
Yeah, and I just want to stay with you for a moment before we bring our third panelist who just joined us. And that is that, as you said, as a CBC staffer, this is unfortunate. And I think that their statement was very fair, very middle ground. They didn't go one way or the other. And I would imagine that that is part of the process in terms of what you do in the CBC.
Absolutely. And I've seen statements like this put out before when other CBC members have found themselves in trouble, particularly for the ethics committee. You got to get a middle of the road statement by the press person for the CBC. And I think that statement you just read and we saw on the screen there, I think that it's fair considering the allegations, and says she was likely to be expelled. And once again, the CBC, we know that Black people are held to a different standard. You cannot, get involved, in these kinds of allegations, because even if it's not true in some situations, if there's any inclination that you might be involved in something, that the government is going to take a look at you. We have a long history of that happening. Unfortunately, this is a case where, like I say, the allegations are extreme.
All right, I want to bring in our third panelist. Teresa Lundy is the principal and founder of TML Communications. Thanks for joining us this evening. What are your thoughts about the Congresswoman, her resignation, especially when, as we've talked about, it impacts the Haitian community, everything that they're going through right now. They are in a state of turmoil here in America and abroad if they are sent back.
I totally agree with our panelists. I think, her resigning is a indication that the times are coming. So it is very unfortunate that she did, but it's also the allegations that are presented against her are also very stringent. Yes, it is hurting the Haitian community, but we also need to be very mindful of the positions that we are in when it comes to taking on the elected official position, and also making sure that we have our ducks aligned in a row. So if there was any type of focus on why she wanted to run for the seat, I think it was very apparent to note that, she resigned because of the situation at hand, and hopefully she can get that resigned and may, have an opportunity to come back. But I think the Haitian community will be okay. I think there should be more representation that will step up in that seat. And I think there is a time for them to rally and galvanize around an elected official that won't have so much of an allegation or scandal in the future.
So I want to throw this out to the three of you, and I'll start with you, Dr. Walker. Should the ethics proceedings stop, perhaps, when there are federal or criminal investigations that are taking place? Should those positions switch? Because this certainly isn't a good predecessor for what people are thinking her guilt or innocence is when it comes to her Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial.
Well, I think it's important to note that, and I think you heard Chairman Guest kind of allude to that. This is the end where she submitted her resignation. She is she's no longer a member of Congress, and that is the investigation is over. And I also should know that he talked about 2.5 years of in terms of this investigation taking place. So it is now the end of the investigation. She is now no longer a public servant, and now just a regular everyday American. And next, obviously, is the criminal trial, and that's going to be challenging.
Yeah, okay. So Patrick, I'm going to say this, that we know that when someone goes to court, in the court of public opinion, in the world of social media anyway, it is tough for people to get the right jury selection, the right representation, the right judge who hasn't been in some way affected by what's going on out there. The ethics committee in their process, it just seems to me to be backwards in terms of when one goes to court to have their fair day and trial. Well, the ethics committee has already spoken. They've already been through, 2 years of investigation. As Dr. Walker just said, it just seems backwards to me. And maybe that's just me. There were some comments from people, who are out there. It just seems to me that you are really kind of tarnishing the judicial process that actually really counts.
Yeah, and I'm also reminded of the fact that public officials have a public trust. And the representatives, she represented her congressional district, and she had an obligation to them that if these allegations were not true, to see it all the way through, to have her day in court. And I think that resigning is not absolution, and it is not innocence. And I am interested about going forward how this resolves itself if there is a criminal case.
Yeah, well, she certainly avoided a lot today by at the midnight hour saying, you know what, I won't go through this process, I resign. And she certainly saved herself quite a bit. All right, we are going to take a break. Stay with us. You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. We'll be right back.
Virginia, we are counting on you. Republicans want to steal enough seats in Congress to rig the next election and wield unchecked power for 2 more years. But you can stop them by voting yes by April 21st. Help put our elections back on a level playing field and let voters decide, not politicians. This is the responsible thing to do. Help us chart a better path forward, Virginia. Vote yes by April 21st.
How you doing? I'm Mark Curry, and you're watching the Black Star Network. That's why I got these glasses on, because that black star is bright.
All right, we have some breaking news that just came down. The Southern Poverty Law Center has just been indicted by the Trump Justice Department. Now, this is something that we were going to be covering anyway. This is a Montgomery-based civil rights group, as you know. And just to catch you up a little bit in terms of what happened before, in a video message that was posted online, the center CEO, Brian Fair, he's already said that he believed that this was coming. He believed that federal investigators were preparing to take legal action against some of his employees, stemming from their use of paid confidential sources to infiltrate and report on violent white supremacists and other extremist groups. And he vowed that the group would not be intimidated or silenced. Well, now the Department of Justice, as I just told you, this is breaking news. The Southern Poverty Law Center says that they have just been indicted. Let's hear a little bit of a soundbite from Brian Fair, the CEO.
For 55 years, the Southern Poverty Law Center has stood as a beacon of hope, fighting white supremacy and various forms of injustice to create a multiracial democracy where we can all live and thrive. We are therefore unsurprised to be the latest organization targeted by this administration. They have made no secret of who they want to protect and who they want to destroy. For example, in October, FBI Director Kash Patel announced the Bureau would sever its ties with the SPLC. And in December, House Republicans held a hearing to accuse us of being partisan and profitable. The latest threat is the most serious: a criminal investigation and possible charges against the SPLC or some of our employees. Although we don't know all the details, the focus appears to be on the SPLC's prior use of paid confidential informants to gather credible intelligence on extremely violent groups. This use of informants was necessary because we are no stranger to threats of violence. In 1983, our offices were firebombed, and in the years since, there have been countless credible threats against our staff. For decades, we engaged in unprecedented litigation to dismantle the Klan and other hate groups. In light of that work, we sought to protect the safety of our staff and the public. We frequently shared what we learned from informants with local and federal law enforcement, including the FBI. We did not, however, share our use of informants broadly with anyone to protect the identity and safety of the informants and their families. And while we no longer work with paid informants, we continue to take their safety seriously. These individuals risked their lives to infiltrate and inform on the activities of our nation's most radical and violent extremist groups. When we began working with informants, we were living in the shadow of the height of the civil rights movement, which had seen bombings at churches, state-sponsored violence against demonstrators, and the murders of activists that went unanswered by the justice system. There is no question that what we learned from informants saved lives. Today, the federal government has been weaponized to dismantle the rights of our nation's most vulnerable people, and any organization like ours that tries to stand in the breach. We stood in the vanguard then, and we stand in the vanguard today. We will not be intimidated into silence or contrition, and we will not abandon our mission or the communities we serve. This moment in history finds Americans in a critical struggle between those who continue to pull and bend the arc of history toward justice and those who resist progress. We will vigorously defend ourselves, our staff, and our work. We will continue to fight hate, and we will continue to seek a safer and more just world. We trust that the many people and organizations who share our commitment to defending civil society will stand with us as together we fight injustice. Thank you.
All right, so this was a group that was founded in 1971. It started out and they had many, many lawsuits and represented civil rights groups and civil rights, did advocacy. but they eventually did start to infiltrate and watch Ku Klux Klan chapters and eventually had the Klan Watch Project. And so now here we are. And I think what's interesting is that they have had a long history of working with the Department of Justice, and they had a symbiotic relationship where they would exchange information that they thought was doing good for everybody. I want to start with you, Dr. Walker. What are your thoughts about this indictment when historically the government, the Department of Justice, has actually depended upon this organization to bring them credible information that ultimately would make people safer, especially during the civil rights movement?
We have to call this for what this is. And the situation we're seeing from the federal government is utilizing old Jim Crow practices. So we're going back to the days of J. Edgar Hoover and other leaders in the FBI and various other federal and state agencies would attack any organization or fought for social justice. And like you talked about, the center's reputation is impeccable as it relates to infiltrating these, the KKK and various other white supremacist organizations to ensure that they protect the lives primarily of Black folks throughout the United States, but all Americans. And this is a 360-degree turn from what we just saw the Biden administration and other Republican, Bush Jr., Sr., other Republican administrations. And once again, these are Jim Crow tactics. And Black people have to pay very close attention. I know we're going to talk about what's happening today in Virginia, but we've got to make sure when midterms come out that we vote and that we make sure that folks who are going to fight for racial justice have our back, and that these kind of blatant attacks to dismantle racial justice organizations doesn't happen.
Teresa, let me go to you. A really interesting, but not surprising move by the administration, but for a group that has been working so long together. It just seems like it doesn't make sense because you're trying to protect people. But this is something that actually does make sense when you think about what the Trump administration has been doing and how it works.
Yeah, this is the playbook. If you don't play by the rules of the Trump administration, you will be canceled, you will be cut, and you will be defunded. And unfortunately, the Southern Poverty Law Center is getting the treatment that the Trump administration has done to many other organizations. But the one thing that I do love that the Poverty Law Center has done is that they've made their position clear of that they are targeted, they are a victim of this malicious threat of their 55-year-old organization. And they made it clear that we haven't done anything wrong. And those who support us, hopefully you still will. But it's unfortunate that, especially with all the dealings that we've seen under the current FBI and his scrutiny and their entire organization, that this is what they want to come for next. But it seems like in the Trump administration that is those that are performing with integrity and that are performing for the highest standards of it are being canceled in this administration. So I just hope that the Poverty Law Center just keeps hope alive and make sure that their donors over the last 55 years are still supporting them in their efforts.
Patrick, this is an organization that has trained thousands of members of the government, as well as worked very closely with the police in order to solve crimes, in order to figure out, what churches were being bombed and where the Ku Klux Klan would move next. This certainly makes it a much more difficult proposition to trust in the police and to understand where law enforcement is coming from. I mean, what is their MO? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and never in my lifetime have I seen the United States government wage war against its own citizens, specifically those who have been working in concert with the government to protect those who are most vulnerable. And so I think it's amazing what we're seeing, but it's not surprising by these presidential prerogatives. And so I, like all of you all, hope that the center really focuses in and digs in its heels to protect itself, because the protections that they offer are very much still important.
Now, Dr. Walker, there was some controversy as to something that is called the hate map, right? And so this is a map of various mainstream Christian groups. And this was something that Kash Patel said, this is a threat. And because you are looking and classifying these hate groups, this is actually spawning violence and going to spawn violence. What's your response to that?
So that's like twisting yourself into a pretzel. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's also really interesting to me that the same folks who say it's okay to pardon January 6th insurrectionists who defiled the U.S. Capitol just a few years ago and committed crimes since then are not a threat to the public, but somehow the center, which has worked with the federal government for decades to dismantle these various hate groups and protect Black people, is a threat. It doesn't make any sense. It makes ideological sense if you have a certain perspective, right-wing perspective on these issues and don't care about the overall concerns or challenges that Black people have encountered through Jim Crow to this period of time. And so they're contradicting themselves. It makes no sense. January 6th individuals are okay, but the center is a threat. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and Teresa, it does seem like a contradiction because of the fact that you have people who are working for the betterment of society and protecting, people across the country. You work in communications. It seems to me like this is what we've been seeing since Trump has come into office, and just another kind of a media opportunity to just say anything, throw people off their course, take people to court because they can, and just put them through the process, knowing that at the end, it's really not going to amount to anything.
This is called the day one strategy of the Trump administration. I've been saying that in inner circles, and I've been saying that externally. If Trump and his team, I was going to say his minions, but his team members want to get folks off of the yellow brick road, figuring out exactly what they're doing and asking too many questions, what they start doing is attacking institutions, organizations, and individuals that are certainly making their mark and have been making their mark for decades in this country. And it's so unfortunate because, as we point out, Southern Poverty Law Center was established in 1971, and their core mission was to help find the issues and some of the concerns that were happening in our communities because they needed extra support. And so when you cut down those resources and institutions and organizations and individuals who are not only just raising their voices loudly, but also proudly to those efforts that are helping those in communities and neighborhoods, it is very clear on what your government is doing for you. And I think it is very clear that the Trump administration is distracting us from something else that is about to happen. But again, I am going to state that because the Trump administration is not funding them and has disconnected them, has canceled them, we want to make sure that we still support them because they are still a nonprofit that can help in other areas.
Yeah, that support is always very important. For those of you who just joined us, this is breaking news that the Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted by the Department of Justice. Patrick, I wanted to ask you this. What does this say about possibly setting a precedent, I would imagine, of other civil rights organizations down the line that they're looking at to indict? Because certainly there are a number out there that do similar work.
Yeah, it's amazing that they are criminalizing spaces, particularly led by minorities, that produce knowledge. And so this is just like an attack on any museum that we have that disseminates information to people. What the center had done historically is disseminate information, and what they are trying to do is to erase it. And so I think while we've seen this from the very beginning, I think going forward to every space that we have that produces knowledge that is built to protect us and to arm us with what we need to know and how we need to move, I think they all should be alarmed. And this is why I think that the Law Center being able to have its day in court and to defend itself is going to set a precedence of how other organizations should move going forward.
Yeah, and again, since this is breaking news, I haven't seen the indictment yet. Maybe I'll look at it in one of the breaks. But I'm very interested as to what the exact charge was, considering that they have been working together for decades. And now all of a sudden we know that in October 2025, they made a change to sever the ties there. Dr. Walker, what are your thoughts about what these charges could even possibly be?
I'm like you. I'm fascinated to read this document for an organization that essentially had a symbiotic relationship. You described with the federal and state governments to identify hate crimes. And once again, it makes absolutely no sense to say an organization that is focused on protecting Americans is somehow now a threat with the change of administrations. But this is consistent once again with, an administration is focused on ideology and not focused on what are the basic needs of Americans, particularly Black folks. I want to note that when we talk about these ideas about hate crimes, et cetera, my parents were born during Jim Crow. So this idea that, these things have certainly gone away is not true. I'm first generation post Jim Crow. So, these issues, these challenges that our family members have to deal with is not some ancient times that I have to read about in a history book. I was just texting with my mother today. So this is real time in terms of Black folks, in terms of the issues, the challenges we've dealt with being in this country and fighting for racial justice.
So as we know, Teresa, this was breaking news. Brian Fair, we already heard a soundbite. That was already prepared before we even started this show and the breaking news came out. So just like Trump, interestingly enough, and of course, they were ahead of the game too. They've been waiting for this, and I just don't think that they're surprised. So obviously a good media move on their end too to get ahead of this. And quite frankly, he didn't seem that fazed. And it's something that they have been facing for a number of years, right? Because people do not want organizations like this to exist. And especially now in 2026, somehow we are in some dysfunctional time where people can say what they want at any time about any organization, especially even when they are trying to protect people.
It's interesting. They gather, and again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not sure if anybody here has their legal degree, but it's like they gather evidence on extremely violent groups, and we know that Trump has a past of having relationships with these violent groups. Those, when we talk about January 6th, those who have been a part of those, quote, violent groups, when they have insurrected our country in some way, shape, or form and have infiltrated ICE as full-time jobs getting paid six figures. And so, unfortunately, for some of us, it's just not surprising. It's another attack on what's happening in our government under this administration. And I think most of us are just waiting for the what's next. And it's unfortunate that with this administration, we can't even focus on the issue at hand because we're always now looking at the rollout. What's the response? Now we got to go to some of the social media posts to get a response because it's not on the official White House press comments, or they're not letting certain reporters inside of these rooms. But this has been an ongoing effort from the administration to, as much as they say they want transparency and they, want the realization of the facts and what they're doing in the administration to get out, and they don't want fake news to be a part of it. They are the convener of most of these altercations that are happening that is affecting everyday folks. And I think people are just kind of getting, I know me personally, I can't say with everybody, but the conversations I'm having with some of my colleagues and friends are that we are just drained of what's coming out of this administration because we're not sure if it's fact, fiction, and then following up, trying to find additional sources to make sure it's corroborated before we even talk about the issues at hand that is what's coming from this administration. So it's like I said before, it's just unfortunate. And I think it is a tall tale of the continuous actions that will be forthcoming as that we just have to deal with until the House and the Senate does something.
I'm going to look at this indictment right now, and I want to share this with our audience. Here is what the grand jury charges are. The Southern Poverty Law Center stated a mission including the dismantling of white supremacy and confronting paid across the country. However, unbeknownst to donors, some of their donated money was being used to fund the leaders and organizers of racist groups, including the KKK, Aryan Nation, and the National Alliance. Their paid informants engaged in the active promotion of racist groups at the same time that SPLC was denouncing the same groups on its website. Now I'm putting the question marks in here. As we go down here, let's see, talks about the donors. It talks about the intelligence reports. Let's see. Then it goes, what's that? Okay. I'm looking on page 3 now. Starting in the 1980s, they began operating a covert network. All right, there we're just getting the facts there. They talk about paying other people in a clandestine way. And I think really what we're getting here is that the donors were somehow a part of a scheme unbeknownst to them. The objective of the scheme was to obtain money through donations through materially false representations and omissions about what the donated funds would be used for. That seems to be the crux of this. Patrick, I'm going to give the baton to you. What are your thoughts about this indictment?
That is quite a word salad, isn't it?
Yes,
what
it
is that? That absolutely means, and it is about as coherent as the public policy that comes out of this White House. Their ability to make up narratives and to spin some stories that really support their own political ideology is absolutely amazing. And if this is what they are being charged with, then I fully expect them to have their day in court and be vindicated, because that absolutely makes absolutely no sense for them to raise donations so the donors can work against what the organization is for. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Let me say I'm going to page 8 here. It looks like all of the charges, which are count 1 through 6, all of them are wire transaction charges, some in the amount of $4,700, $1,000, $1,200, $2,000. Then they've got counts 7 through 10, false statements to a federally insured bank. So what they're really saying is that the purpose of opening these bank accounts was for some type of fictitious and false transaction. And so on page 8 of this indictment, if you are looking this up right now, this is where we have those first counts, and it all has to do with money. Dr. Walker, what's your immediate feedback when you hear about this?
It sounds like they're trying to get them things like wire fraud and other accusations. Listen, I'm not, and I know you're an attorney, I do not have a JD, but I have read many legal documents and, other scholarly works in my day. And I got to tell you, my colleague hit it right on the nose. This is, the writing is terrible, first of all. Can I just say that as an academic? The writing is terrible. It makes no sense. The other thing is, once again, I make the point, this is about ideology. And when you're often center everything in ideology, anything else that makes sense doesn't. And you're singly focused on going after an entity or individual or individuals, and in this case, the center. And they've created this embarrassing document. Doesn't sound like a first-year law student would have written, in my opinion.
Teresa, as I look at this, remind the audience that we are upon some breaking news here with this indictment that we just got, the Department of Justice against the SLPC, mostly wire fraud and bank fraud. All of this has to do with money. All of this has to do with wire transactions, which, as we know, once you cross state lines federally, now you're in federal jurisdiction. And so they are getting oversight and authority over this. What are your thoughts?
I'm now more intrigued than ever to hear what the Poverty Law Center will be saying on the stand, and also having their accountants readily available to dispute or either give a response to some of these transactions. I don't play when it comes to money. So if there's some issues, but sometimes, you know, what I've read in some of these other Trump indictments, you know, they've never given the organization an opportunity to respond. So that's usually always the step one is, hey, can you explain these charges? And then comes the, you know, there's the charges that aren't explained. Here comes the indictment. So according to the video, it doesn't seem like they were even given that judicial process review. And so here we are. Now we see what they're being charged with. And now it's just how they respond. And unfortunately, you know, they're being dragged right now. But I think once the truth and the facts start correlating, we can start getting some answers, you know, to how they responded to these charges.
Yeah, let me fill in some other blanks. I'm now going to page 6 of this indictment. Again, in this breaking news from the Department of Justice against the SPLC to secretly funnel donated money to the Fs, individuals at the SPLC, including a person who would become the chief financial officer and a person who would become the director of intelligence, among others, opened a series of bank accounts in the name of various fictitious entities, including or but not limited to, and it goes down and gives these lists of what they're saying are fictitious entities that were never incorporated, did not have bona fide employees, and conducted no actual business. So they're saying that this all has to do with the relevancy of opening up bank accounts, which, of course, when you open up a bank account, you do need all of this in place. You need officers, you need people to take positions, you need to have employees, and you do need to be honest. I mean, this will be very interesting to see what the response will be. As we close this out, I want to open up the floor. Any idea about what you think the response will be? There may be no response because this sounds so ridiculous.
I think the important thing to remember is, no, I was just going to say one of the objectives is to financially hurt the organization, also hurt their reputation. They have a sparkling reputation for decades. Right. But in addition, this is an effort to financially defund them. That's the word, I'll use a word they like to use. And so that is essentially what they're attempting to do, is to harm them financially with donors and attorneys' fees, et cetera, so that possibly the organization has to go under.
Yeah. And like you said, sometimes people put others and organizations through the process, and that actually is the punishment in and of itself. They know that it's not going to amount to anything, but you have to fend for your reputation. You have to pay for an attorney. You may come out with your reputation on the other side soiled, which, you know, we might be dealing with a defamation lawsuit from the Southern Poverty Law Center. So, you know, we have to see what's to come, but I think that the doors are open because this seems way more than just a stretch. But what happens again is that you get a grand jury to actually agree with what you're saying and close proceedings. Somehow they got enough people to say, you know what, this is legitimate. Let's go on. I think that in the future, we're going to see whether or not a judge thinks that this has even the viability to proceed, or whether or not it is just a waste of the court resources and will actually dismiss the case. All right. Well, all of that to come. And if we have any other breaking news, certainly we're going to keep you up on this. Maybe there will be a response by the end of the evening. All right. You have been watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Stay with us. We are going to be back after a break.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Swing Cash, Basketball Hall of Famer, and you're watching Black Star Network.
All right, just a reminder, if you live in Virginia, you have less than 30 minutes to cast your vote to decide whether to temporarily empower the Democratic-led legislature to redraw congressional and legislative districts ahead of the 2026 midterm election. Virginia's 11 congressional districts are updated every 10 years by the Virginia Redistricting Commission. The last redistricting occurred in 2021, and the next one will be in 2031. If the amendment passes, Virginia will have 10 congressional districts. All right, moving on to other news. I'm sure a lot of you saw this one. A Houston police officer has been relieved of her duties over a video posted to social media of her going on a racist rant. Now, authorities say that they believe the person in the video is Houston police officer Ashley Gonzalez. While she's still technically an employee, she's actually been relieved of her duty. And according to the Houston Police Department officials, Gonzalez turned in her badge and gun and will be checked on to make sure she's at her house every day. She's not allowed to perform any police duties. In the video, Gonzalez appears to refer to an incident that occurred while she was off duty. Let's take a look.
The amount of times that I will always and forever say that I fucking hate niggers. Oh my God, I fucking hate chimps. Like, I hate y'all. Like, I don't fucking, oh, we were slaves this entire, I don't give a fuck, nigga. Like, for a fucking reason, you guys were fucking slaves. You guys don't know anything better than to fucking steal. Like, oh my fucking God, nigga. Like, I was literally eating fucking food with my friend. He had his, oh my God, like, I don't know, por Dios, por gracias de fucking Dios, I had my fucking wallet next to me, like my whole purse, and those fucking, like, that little fucking small ass chimp decided not to fucking steal my fucking wallet, nigga. Oh my God, nigga, I would have grabbed my heel and like whooped the fuck out of that nigga's ass. But like, whatever, right? Some other but no homo or nothing. Y'all don't know how good it felt to say like out loud, like goddamn, nigga, like oh my God, I felt like I was back in the Marine Corps, nigga. Like I kid you not, I don't know what the fuck came over me. I grabbed that nigga by the neck and I was like, come here, you fucking nigger. And oh my God, like I felt like the world just stopped. Like it was just peace. Like I don't know. And then he was just like even I in my head I was like, damn bitch, te pasaste, because I called him a fucking nigger, dog. Like imagine. Many fucking downtown chimps were there, they could have beaten my ass. And then he like stops like, you did not just call me a fucking nigger. I was like, you're a nigger. I was like, oh my God, like you're a fucking nigger and I called you a nigger. Like world peace, bitch, fuck nigger. And I was like, what the fuck are you gonna possibly say? Like, are you gonna call 911 because I called you a fucking nigger? No, right? Oh my God, nigger. I don't know, this shit didn't record, but it was like, I'm kind of glad it didn't record because it was like me expressing how much I fucking hated black people after this. Like, dog, like, let me get a fucking black person on a 911 call tomorrow, especially. Bitch, you're going to fucking jail. I don't give a fuck. You're getting treated like bunch of fucking shit because...
All right, give me a word. Can you hear me? Because seemed like there were some slight technical difficulties. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, let's clean our mental palates of that. Just for the record, she's fired. I mean, I don't even know if we need to do a segment. She's fired. But let me tell you that the Houston police officers, huh? No, she was not fired. But what I'm saying, eventually, she's going to be fired. The Houston Police Officers Union released this statement about the video. The Houston Police Officers Union is extremely disturbed by a video circulating on social media regarding an officer making offensive racist comments. In no way does the HPOU or its leadership condone or tolerate racist behavior for any of our officers. The Houston Police Department prides itself as being the most diverse police department in the nation, largely a product of the collaborative changes to civil service law that the HPOU and the department have made through our meet and confer process. It is our belief that the department is diligently working to confirm the authenticity of this video and will take appropriate measures to ensure public confidence and trust between our department and community. When the investigation into the incident is complete, Gonzalez will either be reinstated or indefinitely suspended, meaning she will be fired or ineligible for rehiring. And that's what I said at the beginning, just as a little joke, but seriously, she's going to be fired. Can I get an amen from Dr. Walker that it is not going to go Ashley's way?
Yeah, amen 15,000 times. I mean, she's going to have to hold this L, and it's self-inflicted. The other thing is, we need to talk about anti-Blackness in the Latina and Latino community, because this is another issue in a diverse state like Texas, and obviously I'm in Florida, that we don't talk enough about anti-Blackness. And this is an example. We also obviously need an investigation into the individual she came in contact with during her period of time in law enforcement, because she clearly was unhinged and could have, certainly done something that individuals didn't have, impeded someone's civil rights. So we need complete investigation on any interactions with any Black folks.
Yeah, and Teresa, for someone who was supposed to be a peace officer, there wasn't a lot of peace going on in her spirit. I'm not even sure what she was talking about specifically, what got her mad. But if she's mad that way, sitting in her car, wherever she was, Lord knows what she would do with someone who was African American in her, in her purview or under her authority.
Gonzalez actually told us what she would do in the video. She said if any Black person would come up against her, she would make sure their Black ASS will be in prison. So we don't really have to speculate. We just have to feel challenged that these are the type of folks that the Houston Police Department is actually hiring. Now, I think over time, I think their statement was very generalized, but I think that should have been an immediate firing. I don't think there should be necessarily any investigation. There's no need for an authentication of the video because it's on her profile. It's on her social media profile. And I'm sure she was probably in the back room that clearly said, I said it and I did it. And now what are you going to do about it? And so I think when organizations take the time, too much time, to actually make the decisions that is supposed to be made in the immediacy, it then challenges the actual workers and the morale that are Black, that are brown inside of these institutions that have to go and protect these neighborhoods and communities, and not sure they have to run into a Gonzalez who decides in her spare time after work hours that she wants to share her thoughts about African Americans and Black people and brown. Anybody that doesn't look like her. And that's, I think, is a real challenging factor of not only her statement, but okay, we now have to do an investigation. There's no real investigation that's necessary. She did it. She needs to be suspended. She needs to be fired. And we need to conclude her dialogue because, one, it was offensive, but two, to the African-American workers who are day-to-day making sure in a diverse, that's what they said according to the statement, in a very diverse law enforcement environment that are in neighborhoods, that are in communities, that are supporting African-American communities and their initiatives, block parties, events, whatsoever, that they have the protection and the safety that they need to make sure that if they don't raise their hand the wrong way, that they're not only getting arrested, but also beat and unfortunately some other things that happen. So I think the actual statement from the Houston Union Association should have been a little bit more better and more stern, or just don't release a statement at all. There's no statement that's needed unless she's fired, and that's the end of the story.
I agree. I mean, it was very, very vague. Patrick Gonzalez took an oath She broke the oath. I mean, that is like, it's basic.
Absolutely. And yet I am not confident that this is the end of it just by her being fired, because white supremacy always seeks redress, even for phantom wounds. And so she gets fired for articulating her racial animus, but then she becomes a victim when she's held accountable. And she's shifted now to become a symbol of the bruising that happens by minority groups, and she becomes a victim. We've seen this happen over and over and over again. And so her being fired from, the Houston police department, it seems more like, oh, she'll just be shifted into another role or another position. And so I think that's the time in which we live in. And I'd be very curious as to how this all plays out.
All right. Well, when we come back after the break, more on our continuing coverage on domestic violence and the anatomy of an abusive relationship. Make sure to stay with us. We'll see you after the break.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
What's up? It's Talib Kweli. I'm CEO. This is the Black Star Network.
Seen too many Black women killed at the hands of a man who claimed to have loved them. We're talking about sons, boyfriends, husbands who have cut short the lives of mothers, sisters, wives, girlfriends, aunts, and grandmothers. Some have made headlines, but others have gone without the spotlight. So here are a few. Cerny in Fairfax, Tynice Friday, Felicia Barnes, Mary Major, Nancy Meteor Bowen, Precious Johnson, Barbara Deere, Danielle Graves, Tammy McCullum, Monica Scott, Ashanit Allen, Ashley Robinson, Trinell Collins, Devonta Curtis, and Tamika Kamwani. Now, in tonight's segment of Confronting the Epidemic of Fatal Domestic Violence, we're going to look at the anatomy of an abusive relationship. Do you know the signs? And do you know how to remove yourself safely from a potentially dangerous situation? Well, joining us now are Maisha Coulter, the CEO of Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse, and Bishop Janine Hyman, a psychologist. And I want to start with Bishop Hyman because you sent a viewer comment about Roland's coverage of this important topic. I want to first read you some of it and let our viewers know what you sent. Hi, Roland Martin. I watched your unfiltered episode with my sister, Dr. Monique Swift, president of the American Association of Black Psychologists, on mental health and male violence against Black women. I'm appalled that so many of our sisters still refuse to call this what it is, a mental health crisis. I write as a 64-year-old Black woman, psychologist, academician, bishop, and church leader of 45 years, who has watched this crisis mature and deepen across my entire career as my people slowly assimilate and lose our identity. This is also personal. In the last few years, my god sister was murdered by her son right here in my city. A woman pastor, a friend of mine, was murdered in front of her own church by her brother. Both men had mental illness. Both cases went quiet. These deaths are still fresh, but nobody is talking about them. The data confirms what we already feel in our bones. We have the receipts to prove your point. This is a mental health and identity crisis. Now, nearly 20 people are physically abused every minute. More than 10 million people are abused a year. 1 out of 4 women and 1 out of 7 men experience domestic violence. 10 million children are witnesses to some form of domestic violence. So we are going to be talking about this right now with our guests. I want to start with you, Janine. And I just want your thoughts about your personal experiences and what you've seen across the board and how you see that in relationship to what we've seen in the headlines and what seemed very common to you in terms of what you've seen over the years, the cycle is just repeating itself.
Yeah, what I've seen, and thank you for having me, but in these 40-some years of just doing ministry and mental health, and even my own lived experiences, I've watched the numbers about violence just keep inching up and inching up, and even the stats from 2023 until now, it's a pervasive problem that is indicative of what's been kind of underneath. By the time we get to this, the chicken has come home to roost, and we have not dealt with either as a church or community, sometimes even in the academy, the underlying issues that are almost inherent to people who have been oppressed for 400 and some years. And so we keep watching it inch up. The women, the demographic of women who experience the most violence and the most abuse is a Black woman. And it is almost like our plight, our voice, our influence, our contributions are erased and replaced. And the more we continue to do this and keep silent and keep the mental health taboo, the more we're going to see this continue to escalate. And the more we assimilate into the dominant culture. There's some things we're seeing now that we didn't used to see. Our people do. And the more we assimilate and lose who we are, the more we look at and model power after the dominant culture of less melanated people, we're going to see this continue to increase and increase and increase. And with social media, the violence is not just with the gun. The violence begins with the mental stuff. The violence begins with these negative tropes and these negative stereotypes about women. The violence begins in the pulpit with doctrine that keeps women at the bottom of a hierarchy. It begins with gaslighting. It begins with psychological abuse and misogyny. It begins in those places. And the more we keep quiet, because we are trying to protect Black men from the system, the more it continues to just mature and fester.
And as you mentioned, and we've been talking about this throughout the week, the misogyny, the patriarchy, the culture feeds into all of this madness. It can be triggering. It builds a different type of person that, as you said, that we have not seen and is not indicative of our culture, right? You have up close and personal witnessed domestic violence, experienced it, and I'm sure as a bishop, heard from women and even sometimes men who have gone through this. What do you hear in terms of your firsthand experience? What are people telling you in terms of where the mental illness might fit in, or are there other things you're seeing?
Really, we're just starting to talk about it. Usually when I get calls, and those of you who are on social media, every time you see a flyer almost, you have a visceral reaction because you think somebody's dead. But when I get the calls, it is people are devastated. And then they try to kind of use our faith, to kind of hyper-spiritualize it. And so we really don't get to the meat of it. And for most of us, once we get you through the crisis and we get you through the funeral, we're not even talking about it. Those 2 murders that happened here, I'm not even hearing about it. I'm not hearing their names. I'm not hearing any more about what happened. It kind of goes back to this mum's the word. And so, as we get a little deeper in the conversation, we'll talk about the fact that you can kind of do this because we know there's not going to be any justice because it's a Black woman. I want to share this very quickly. And this is kind of what turned my head. I was on the waterfront down in Tidewater, walking my dog, and I passed a Black man on a bike talking on the phone. And this is the conversation that I heard. All she want is some child support. I can't stand her so and so and so. And then he said this out of his mouth. He said, a Black woman ain't. My head did the exorcist. And in that moment, it almost felt like the injustices done to the ancestors, the rage of that came to me. And when I tell you I wore that man out, I wore that man out. I couldn't even believe I did it. It wasn't all my rage. I literally, as I looked up, I literally saw in the clouds faces of Black women that, whose voice has been silenced, whose blood has never been requited, whose blood has never been avenged, whose stories never got told, whose credit was erased and replaced with maleness. And the rage that came on me. And as I started walking off, and then I was like, now say something. I beat you like a man. I was like, oh my God. Oh, Bishop. And I had to call my mentor. I said, what just happened? What just happened? And then I understood as I began to sit with this. This is an underlying resentment that is sold into us, Willie lynched into us. Sold into us even during slavery, where there is a collective unconscious resentment and tension between Black men and Black women. And what he said out of his mouth is something that is a pervasive thought, whether we know it or not.
Maisha, let me bring you into this so that when we look at all of these cases, but especially these two recent cases that have been highlighted, the 8 children that died, and the former lieutenant governor, we know that there was domestic issues in terms of a divorce. And we know that there were issues in terms of just their relationship. They were separating. And I wonder, is there anything that tells us about the pattern of domestic violence escalation? If we look at those 2 particular cases, anything that we can take away from them, because they did have some commonalities.
They did, and that's exactly something that I think we should be talking about. Yes, there are clear patterns in regard to escalation of violence and the propensity for those types of relationships to end in intimate partner homicides. For at least 25 years, my organization has been using what's called a danger assessment. And that's an opportunity for a person who is in a situation where there is intimate partner violence to assess whether or not there are signs and factors that might indicate the level of risk that they are in while either staying in that relationship and or trying to leave the relationship. For most people who succumb to intimate partner violence, they have left the relationship. Approximately 70% of people who are killed by an intimate partner or former partner are killed post the relationships or post their attempts to leave that relationship. So the idea that a person is vulnerable in any domestic violence situation is true, but it is even more true when the person who is the perpetrator of domestic violence is losing control of their intimate partner. And that looks like separation. That looks like filing for divorce. These are permanent efforts on the part of the person who is in that intimate relationship, saying to the person who has been abusive, I no longer want to be in this relationship with you. And that tends to trigger and escalate the need for that person to assert that power and control, which is at the core of why those behaviors are happening in the first place. And so we should be very, very clear that when someone is leaving an abusive relationship, there are things that they can look for, and there are things that they need to be cautious around. So, for example, if you are leaving someone and you have left them on multiple occasions, if that person has at any time during the course of that relationship said, I want to kill myself. I'm going to kill you. Take that seriously. If that person has lost their job, if they have access to weapons, because most intimate partner violence homicides are done with the use of a handgun or some type of gun. Besides guns, strangulation. So if you have been strangled or choked while in an intimate relationship, if that's happened, and we're talking about an accumulation of these things. If you share children in common and you get into a new relationship and you're now maybe living with a new person, or that new person is involved with the children that you share with that past abusive partner. All of those things collectively, you start to add them up, and that's what a danger assessment does. It basically gives you a score. So 1, they lost their job. 2, they have easy access to a handgun. 3, they have threatened to kill themselves. 4, they have threatened to kill you. 5, you have children in common. You've filed for divorce. You've taken legal action against this person to leave that relationship. And this just continues to score. The one that we use is a product of Dr. Jacqueline Campbell. And again, it's been around for 25 years. Law enforcement has the opportunity to use ones that are more shorter in length. They ask 6 questions as opposed to the 20-something questions that are in the danger assessment that the one that I'm referencing, that Jackie Campbell created. But how these things got created is because homicides, after they occur, are examined across the United States. There are death reviews. Teams, I sit on one here in Houston in Harris County. And what they're doing is they're profiling the lives of people who have succumbed to intimate partner homicide. And they're looking at patterns that are common amongst all of those homicide victims. And so that list of 20 plus questions appear to be something that happened over and over and over and over again with victims of domestic violence homicides. And once they determine that this pattern could be monitored on a regular basis, then that's how the danger assessments were created.
And then in terms of this creation, walk me through. So if someone is assessing their situation right now, this will help them, I guess, find the best door which to leave. I mean, how does this assessment help someone?
Ultimately, the danger assessment is an opportunity for them to safety plan. And safety plans are, let me look at my particular situation and my particular circumstances, my resources, and see what are those and how can I help to keep myself safe, to keep my children safe while I leave this relationship. For some people, that may look like leaving in a very covert, quiet manner, going into hiding almost. And then for others, that might mean sounding the alarm, going and getting a civil protective order, letting everybody know that the domestic violence has occurred, because domestic violence thrives in 2 things: fear, secrecy, and, well, I should say 3 things, and shame. And so when you have those things, a lot of times people have no idea that a person is experiencing domestic violence. These things happen behind closed doors. People who are abusive are not showing up with a T-shirt on that says, I hit my wife, I beat my children, I do these things. That's not what happens. Most of the time they have a public-facing persona that can be very charming, can be very articulate, communicative. These are not people who are monsters in the sense that, oh my goodness, we should all be afraid of this person. And remember, they're professing to love this person. And more likely than not, they're professing to love this person to everyone on the outside. So we who are looking in from the outside have no clue that this person is dealing with domestic violence. And they don't want to admit that they're dealing with domestic violence for a number of reasons. One, the shame of it. They still love the person. Especially one of the things that we need to be cognizant of in our community is this fear of the pain for the perpetrator, whether that's an calling the police. They don't want to call the police because their perpetrator would be at risk of substantial harm based on the relationships and the history that we have with Black men have with engaging with law enforcement. So there's these embedded fears that go even beyond the fear of the person who's doing the harm toward them, that put the victim in a more isolated and dangerous situation. So what we're thinking through is, once you have determined you are at risk, you are not just at risk for harm, you are at risk for lethality. That's what the danger assessment is assessing, not just that, because they already know that domestic violence has happened, but they're now acknowledging that it's escalating, that they want to leave, that this person has threatened them, that this person has nothing to lose because they've lost their job or they've lost community, or people are now maybe aware of their identity as an abusive person, which again, that had been hidden, that had been protected by the survivor for sometimes months, sometimes years. And so when they have that level of secrecy and fear dominating their world, it's hard for people to also recognize that it's getting worse. This is a problem that I am not going to be able to solve alone. I need to leave to protect myself, protect my children, and potentially save my life. They're not looking at it from that vantage point. And so that's something that when I talk to clients for the first time and I'm talking to them about, we're going through those questions, it strikes them that all of these things are true for them. And then to clarify to them that the reason we're asking this is because we know that we're going to have to protect you while you're filing for your divorce, while this divorce is going on. Because guess what? Now that we're filing for divorce, we're also going to have to deal with the new patterns of coercive control that exist through the litigation process.
That's right.
And a lot of times, even attorneys, they don't, you go to a family lawyer who might practice divorce and know how to get you out of a relationship, but they may not be trauma informed. They may not have an acute knowledge about domestic violence and how risky it is for people who are in domestic violence to get out of their relationships. People may show up to a lawyer and think that that is the solution. I'm getting a divorce. Obviously, things are going to end. When you're trauma informed and educated about domestic violence, you understand that no, things are probably going to ratchet up. We encourage people not to live in the house with the person who they're getting a divorce from. When we are notifying someone of a divorce, more times than not, and this is jurisdictions all out the country, you have to be served with papers. Those service of papers, that's an opportunity to trigger that out of control, loss of control by that abusive partner. And that trigger can ultimately catapult that person into taking those very dangerous and lethal acts, which in the two cases that we're talking about, clearly that was a part of that dynamic. Without knowing more, we know that both cases involved a pending divorce and the requirement to come to court, in a very short period of time.
Yes, absolutely. Bishop, I wanted to bring you in here because I heard you saying, yes, that is a trigger. Is it something that you think with this conversation now that you're going to see more people come to you for advice? And if so, does the church have the resources these days? Because as you mentioned, many times people do not want to go to anything that has to do with religion because of the way that religion puts women down on the bottom of the ladder.
There's a definite tension there, particularly when we talk about the Black church, which for oppressed people should be a place of resistance. It should be a place of safety. Inherent in most of our religion, particularly the Abrahamic religions, the abuse of women is sometimes even encouraged. I've heard stories from some of our brethren preachers that said they were groomed to do what they do to women, and the kind of women you should do this to, and don't do this to any woman who has more to lose than you, and payoffs for the sexual traumas and all kinds of things. And then, of course, again, we are looking at a patriarchal kind of religion that subjugates women. And so you pour this subjugation of women and this hierarchical scale that we have. You know, there's God, and if you're Christian, then there's Jesus, and then after Jesus, there's the man, and then after that, there's the woman, and then let's put the rest of it, then there's the black man, and under that is the black woman. And so many times, it's kind of taboo. We don't talk about it. And what we do, I heard our dear sister just say many times, and this is Western culture, when a woman blows the whistle, then the perpetrator is treated like the victim. And then it's all the venom and the vitriol against the victim. And so a lot of times I've dealt with it. A lot of times the women are still protecting. They have to protect their economics. They have children. They have to protect the economics, you know, for the family. They have to protect that man's image. They have to protect that man from the system. And then they have to protect themselves from the public shame that she talked about so beautifully. And so a lot of it is just kind of glossed over, not mentioned at all. And many times we do not have the resources because we are still telling people you don't need nothing but Jesus. And we take the same gospel that has been used to oppress us to try to liberate us. You cannot use the same tools that were used to oppress us. You cannot use the same diagnostic measures because the pathology of the oppressed is not the same pathology of the oppressor. And so we're going to have to begin to have more conversations like this. And I applaud you. I applaud Roland for his efforts to do this because we have got to kind of now move beyond the taboo nature and begin to heal ourselves. We're going to have to do this ourselves. And we're going to have a different kind of conversation that's not glossed over by hyper-spirituality. We're going to have to look at, as clinicians, as researchers, what kind of things can we do to develop and further develop our own tools to handle the kind of pathology that comes from generational trauma, generational stress, and systemic racism. We're going to have or go back to some of our black writers and our black authors and some of our ancestral voices and return to black values where the feminine or the divine feminine has always had placement. And so we've got a lot of work to do, but we've got the people to do it. We're going to have to take care and going to have to bring healing and reformation and transformation to ourselves. Our faith cannot be used as a tool to escape the ugliness of our collective pathology. Our faith now must be used as a tool of resistance.
Maisha, let me ask you this, and thank you, Bishop, for those words. Can you walk me through this hypothetical? You know, you're out in public, your husband, your boyfriend always berates you out in public, might even grab you by the shoulders. Now, we know that that is power and control, and that might be small, but that's the beginning of things that can get out of hand. But in that situation, what does one do, a female, to intercede and stop it and correct it? What are the tools at that level? Because I see that level quite a bit where the woman doesn't even think I'm being abused because it's not the physical. We know about the power and control will. For those of you who are out there, it's put out by Duluth, Minnesota. But there are different ways that one can control somebody. But in that situation right there, what can she do to change the tide?
Well, first and foremost, recognize that if that is happening, it's unacceptable behavior. And I will tell you, no one starts out hitting people in the face, punching them punching someone. It is subtle. There's a lot of things that are going to happen that are subtle, but those are the accumulation of red flags that we need to be on the lookout for. So if you're in a situation, one where you are feeling coerced or feeling uneasy in the manner that you just described, take note of that behavior and recognize that that is behavior that is likely to accumulate and become more and more and more, because most especially if your response to that behavior is they got control, they were able to coerce you into behaving a way that's different than what you intended to behave. Because again, that's what's at the beginning of these types of relationships, is people who use subtle tactics at first. If that works, it may stay subtle for a while. But if it doesn't work, then it's just going to escalate to more and more and more. And what you described is only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of things that happen early in relationships that people need to understand the accumulation of red flags and how those things can ultimately end up in, oh, I'm in an abusive relationship. People who enter relationships absolutely. So, and let me give you a couple of things that stand out in my mind and that I've experienced working directly with survivors for as many years as I have. Relationships that move quickly. They are people who come into the relationship hot and heavy. They are constantly flattering you. And then that flattery turns into jealousy. They insist that you spend time with them to the exclusion of your friends, your family. This is the opportunity for isolation to occur. They want you to participate in their activities or activities that are mutually exclusive to you all. And again, they take you out of your norms. It's one thing to fall in love and be passionate about one another in the very beginning. But if you find yourself alone and only with this person after a few weeks or after a few months when you did not have those patterns, you need to be concerned. They don't honor your boundaries. They want you to know they want to know where you are at all times. I've had young people, this is one of those things that sticks out in my mind. You have these apps like, my office lights just went out. You have these apps like Snapchat where it's cute to take a picture of yourself wherever you are. Take a picture of yourself, doing whatever. But I've seen patterns of that particular app being used to track someone, to make sure that you're where you say you are. Those are all these very subtle things. Again, it's okay for you to spend time with a person and when you're falling in love and you're learning who each other are. But if, again, you are isolated, you can't spend time with anybody else. If everybody who is around you are no longer good people that you can, there's a problem with your best friend, there's a problem with your cousin, there's a problem with your mother. Something is wrong. We don't necessarily take that to heart. And that's where the trouble begins. It's not recognizing that those are red flags for people who are ultimately going to assert power and control in your intimate relationship.
Inside of that intimate relationship, what do outsiders do? Let's say a family recognizes this. How do you go about helping someone and maybe help them recognize it? Because like you said, typically people in domestic violent relationship, they don't want to talk about it. They are ashamed, but what can you do when you see clear signs that the person is a victim of domestic violence?
Well, the first thing that you do is keep an open line of communication, because if you do learn that things have escalated and that they are going in a negative direction, the worst thing that you can do is turn away from the person when they have communicated to you something is wrong. A lot of times what happens, remember we talked about that shame factor of domestic violence. You don't want to have someone disclose to you that, I'm concerned about his behavior. I'm concerned about him doing this. And your response be, you need to get out of that. You need to leave him. And if they don't leave him and if they don't get out of it, guess what? They will not be coming back to you because you're now a source of that shame. A source of that place where they don't feel heard anymore. So keeping an open mind and keeping the judgment violence-free zone is really, really critical to being a resource and an ally to someone when they ultimately do decide to leave that relationship. Because I will assure you that people who are in domestic violence relationships do not want to leave their relationships. What they want is for the behavior that is negative toward them to stop. And unfortunately, they will not be able to stop or control that person's behavior by being compliant. By all they're doing is decreasing and decreasing and decreasing and losing their autonomy, but they are not changing that abuser. What they're doing is training that abuser to know this is working. I have beat her down. I have isolated her. I am in control. And so once that starts to happen and they really truly are isolated and without resources, it makes it even that much harder for them to leave that relationship. So as an outsider looking in, learn to not judge, always be a listening ear for them. I can't tell you how many women that I have started a divorce with and had to kind of stop the process. And I know that they're not accepting my call because they want to get back with that person. But guess what? I'm going to still be here because at the end of the day, I know that that person is dangerous for them. I know that they are at risk for real harm. And I don't ever want to shut somebody out to the point that they lose an actual resource that could allow them to get out of that relationship safely. So that's what you have to think about as a loved one, as an outsider who's observing and watching someone who you love turn inward, lose themselves, get beat down, both mentally and physically, and still stay there and want to try to help them.
All right, I want to bring my panel in. I want to start with you, Dr. Walker. Questions for Maisha or Bishop?
Yeah, thank you for this really important conversation. We need to continue to have it, particularly in the Black community. One of the things I want to talk about, and in the clinicians, can we talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, in terms of how children are impacted in the long-term trauma they experience when they view intimate partner violence?
Yeah. So for those in the audience who don't know what adverse childhood experiences are, it is children who are impacted by domestic violence, seeing domestic violence in their homes. Oftentimes, the most immediate response is their own behavioral issues show up either in school or in public spaces where, they might have been a kid who was well-behaved or normally behaved, and then that behavior starts to change. And it can also continue to evolve depending on the age of the child. So we're talking about younger children. You'll see behavior changes, usually for the negative, usually in the form of maybe violence, maybe children not listening, being defiant. As they age and increase in their understanding about the dynamics of domestic violence and witnessing that in their homes, what you will oftentimes see is children picking a side. They will ultimately mirror the behavior of survivors or the abused, or they may mirror the behavior of the perpetrators. And it sometimes lines up with gender, but not always. It's just something that does happen where when kids are seeing domestic violence occur in their home, those are some of the immediate responses. Younger kids also have developmental issues. You can interrupt their capacity, their abilities as far as their cognitive development as a result of seeing this type of violence and experiencing that harm or watching that harm on a regular basis. They deal with PTSD and some of the mental health issues that occur by having those traumas occur based on just the actual observation of violence, not necessarily even them physically being harmed or assaulted themselves.
All right, Teresa, a question for Bishop or Maisha?
Yes.
Yeah, Maisha and Dr. Heyman, thank you so much for that deep dive into domestic violence. I actually work with a client of mine whose job is to do PFA orders. I think one of my questions for you is, with this newer generation coming up, not millennials, but I believe it's Generation Y or Z, but the younger generation, How are they supposed to identify some of these signs, especially on social media? Social media is kind of like the new app for social conversations and connection. So how do they make sure that they are starting to see these signs, just even maybe verbally inside of these group chats and direct messages?
Yeah, earlier I was talking about Snapchat and using those types of apps for the purpose of controlling the other by, you know, confirming where you are, show me your location. They can see where each other are on a regular basis. And in the past, we didn't have those easy ways to, for lack of a better word, stalk someone, right? The communication style in social media, how you're communicated to, what do the DMs and the direct messages look like? Is the same type of verbal abuse being used through text messages? Are you being shamed by social media, whether that be using intimate photos in a derogatory or negative way? Those are things that are happening with our young people on a regular basis, and they're not necessarily identifying those things as coercive control. They're not identifying it as domestic abuse. They just see it as that's what's happening. Oh, I can't tell you how many times, oh, miss, he's tripping. Just this sort of minimization of bad behavior, but in the way that they communicate. And that is, and unfortunately, it is, again, pervasive. It is opportunistic. It's just something that's at the ready, and it's being minimized and not explained in a way that they recognize is unacceptable. I should not have to tolerate this level of communication. I shouldn't have to show somebody where I am and they be able to track me at all times. I should be able to move around freely. I shouldn't give up my sports or give up the things that I like or the friends that I like because I also like this person. Bringing that to their attention and letting them understand that those behaviors and expectations by someone who says that they care about you and love you is very much problematic. You want to be in a relationship where you are encouraged to be your best self, whether that is if you are into being in, plays at school, in the band, playing a sport. The person who cares about you should be supportive of those things, not minimizing those things, telling you to skip those things, telling you to retreat from, the friends that you have, especially when those friends have a positive influence on you. Or not just the friends, the parents, your mom is crazy, your dad is crazy, they're tripping. You need to do something about how they talk to me. Those things are actually happening with our young people. And again, they're not making those connections. So we need to, again, keep those open communications with them, have the dialogues, watch television shows where behavior of their peers are negative. Watch those shows with your children, talk to them about the behavior, hear what their opinions are around how this, character is behaving in, Euphoria or,
yes, whatever
the shows are. I have a 15-year-old, so I'm kind of into understanding things from their vantage point as much as I possibly can. But that's from a parent to parent. That's what we should be doing, is we should be engaging as much as we possibly can, keeping dialogue with our young people, and not, again, we can judge, but we have to judge in a way that doesn't offend to the point where they isolate themselves or break that communication. Or if you know that you have a reliable friend or reliable family member that they will communicate with, then encourage that dynamic. Whatever you do, do not break the lines of communication, and educate your children as much as you possibly can and influence them as much as you possibly can about what healthy relationships look like, what should be the communication that you receive someone who again, professes to love you, care about you. How should that look? Model that behavior as much as you possibly can.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yes, Bishop, please go ahead.
Okay. I think also it is important that we understand that as much as our children are exposed to violence and to social media, we're, over a third of young people in 30 countries are reporting about being cyberbullied and all of this. They begin to skip school, and certainly we begin to see certain behaviors of acting out in the school. Beyond this, we have to look also at the conditioning of our children who hear the violence in the music. They see the violence modeled online, the videos, in the comment sections, the viral arguments between couples and things like that. So we need to understand also that this is literally changing. Something up in front of them is literally changing the neurological pathways of the prefrontal cortex. And so while they are looking at mature stuff, their brains have yet to mature. We're finding out that the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for connecting dots, learning from experiences, being able to control impulses, and all of that develops much later, up into the 20s and 30s now. Than it used to. And so we need to understand that we cannot allow a screen and all of the stuff that comes out of the screen and on the screen to educate and raise our children. They should look for certain things. If somebody starts to tell you, like, don't tell your parents this, or don't tell nobody this, or they start to tell you things about their trauma and then your trauma, and then this starts off with the trauma bonding, certain kind of trigger words that you see when you respond certain ways, and they come at you with the vitriol and the gaslighting and all of that, or they're pressuring you to send images or to send pictures in the inbox, or they're as she began talking about, they begin to charm you and to literally massage every area where you are insecure or where you don't feel validated. They're going to turn on all of that charm until literally something in the brain is released that you literally become addicted to. Some of the reasons why women don't leave is because as soon as they threaten to leave, because it's a codependent relationship and a lot of displaced aggression, where the men can't strike out at who they're really angry at, so they do it where they can, and not gonna get in a lot of trouble. But even then, when they come back and they buy you back, and I'm sorry, and da-da-da-da-da, and even when they go off on them online, you made me angry, why you make me do that? There's things going on neurologically in the brain that almost becomes like an addiction. And so it is difficult. We have to sit with our children, as she said, begin to have conversations, we got to monitor what's going on in our children. There is no substitute for raising. There is no substitute for quality time. There is no substitute for educating your own children and teaching them how to draw boundaries and teaching them certain things to look out for and keeping, even with your kids, I know you be wanting to knock them out, but even with your kids, keeping a kind of judgment-free zone so that they feel safe to have conversations with you without feeling like you're gonna be displeased or, without feeling like I'm doing something wrong or I'm bad. We need to be very intentional about positively reinforcing any good thing that we find in our children, any good behavior. Shape it by reinforcement and reward, and constantly teach them their value. Constantly teach them their value.
All right, Patrick.
Thank you both for your work and your labor in this area. Bishop, I want to keep you talking for a minute. I'm deeply fascinated by your articulation of what the problem is and how you marry it to your theology. My question maybe comes on a couple of different levels. Have you found much resistance in having conversations with church leaders or pastors specifically who happen to be men about centering intimate partner violence, because you and I probably both can agree that intimate partner violence is not tertiary and not a tertiary issue for the church. It is central, but to acknowledge it as being central then would mean that it is an epidemic, to which it actually is. And perhaps people don't want to come to church for that. And so we push it off to the side or act like it's not happening. And so my question is, have you found resistance in having the conversation? And then on a systemic level, how have you imagined we can equip the Black church in order to center these issues with our language and with our programs to make the church a more safe space for women?
Absolutely. That's loaded. But yes, there is pushback, particularly with men. Some of it is indoctrination. Some of it is belief system. And some of it is, again, the whole concept of control. This stuff does not sell. This stuff does not raise offerings. This stuff does not draw a crowd. And so even in trying to make a comeback from the pandemic and COVID, we're using all kinds of things to draw people back to church. But I think if we would actually remove some of the hyper spirituality of, late in the midnight hour, God gonna turn it around. That's nice. But for most of us, that didn't happen. Let Jesus fix it. Okay, well, Jesus didn't break it. The system is broken, and we are a broken people. So we're going to have to marry, if you will, the prophetic and the psychological. We're going to have to synthesize the scientific and the sacred. We're going to have to synthesize our psychology and our theology to recognize that they never should have been dualistic. They are not dichotomous. They are one and the same. We have in our congregation, we have teachers, we have marriage and family therapists, we have psychologists, we have social workers. Those people need to be employed, whether by money or whether by paying it forward or paying it back. We need to pull those people in among our eldership, among our associates, because if we don't use the tools that we have within, then we force people to go outside, and they end up going outside to other people who know nothing about us, who know nothing about our Blackness, who know nothing about our experience, who know nothing about our trauma. And so we're going to have to use who we have and understand that healing is not just something supernatural. Our pathology exists on multiple levels. It is cognitive. It is relational. It is spiritual. It is economic. It is biological. It is psychological and emotional. And if we're going to begin to heal, we're going to have to do it at multi-levels. We call it, in my profession, wraparound services. And so the church now must become a major proponent of resistance, a major proponent of our own healing and liberation. When we start going back to that, and we start using what we have within our ranks, I think we're going to begin to see some changes occur, and it will become, again, an institution, not just of worship, not just a social institution and an institution of spiritual growth, but it will become an institution of resistance and an institution of empowerment.
Indeed, indeed. Bishop Hyman, I want to thank you this evening. I also want to thank you, Maisha. I know that your organization certainly is a source for people who are out there, and hopefully they will be reaching out. Thank you to the both of you. Before we go, I also want to just share that if you or someone else that you know needs help, here are the numbers of the Domestic Violence Hotline, National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, that's 7233, and 1-800-799 787-3324. Then there's the National Center for Victims of Crime at 855-484-2846, and that's 855-4-VICTIM. And finally, Strong Hearts Native Helpline at 844-762-8483. Make sure that you stay with us for the continuation of our coverage every single day this week as we deal with this traumatic domestic violence that has been affecting our community, not just in the past few months or few weeks, but for decades and decades. And it is time for us to address it in this way. All right, you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. We will be back after the break.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, everybody, I'm T.D. Jakes, and I want to encourage you to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered. It'll blow your mind.
All right, a federal judge has permitted key claims of racial harassment and retaliation to advance in a case involving two former McDonald's executives who raised internal concerns and subsequently alleged retaliation. The lawsuit, filed by former Black McDonald's franchise operators, alleges disparities in store placement, grading, support, and expansion opportunities. Former McDonald's franchisee Van Jakes joins us now to discuss why it was important for the judge to allow this case to proceed to trial. Thank you so much for being with us today, Van.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So for people who haven't been following this, I mean, we certainly know that this has been in the news for a while, but what are some of the issues that we're dealing with that you want to make sure the public knows that are about to be adjudicated because of this case?
Yeah, we've been waiting a long time just to get our day in court as you speak. These are separate cases, but we got similar situations in terms of standards. You know, you should have one standard, but there was two different standards. You know, some for white operators, some for Black operators, some for white employees, some for the Black employees. The two female Black employees are getting their chance in court, hopefully in September, and we hope to be right after them so we can have our day in court and get to discovery so we can get to the facts.
Mm-hmm. These facts, what exactly are there? I mean, I listed a few of them, for example, in terms of store placement, grading. I would imagine, obviously, that the store placement is, I mean, you might get more foot traffic and better customers when you're on one corner as opposed to another corner. Explain to me how some of these things played out, like the store placement as well as the grading. You don't get the choice to determine where you want your store to be. Is it assigned?
Well, it's McDonald's supposedly has a system called the National Restaurant Business Standards, right? So everybody should have the same standards in terms of how you're grading, when you can get a new store, where you can get a new store. But when I became an operator, I didn't know there were different standards for white operators and Black operators because I was in the system. And when they tell you, you got X, Y, Z to do, you got to do X, Y, to Z and do. But that's a financial cost. If the white operator doesn't have to do those same costs, then who makes more money, a white operator or a Black operator? Of course, a white operator. That's one of the cases. Then you got so many terms of getting a new store. They are limited where you get your new stores at. So there's so many things that we didn't find out, me personally, until I left the system, that there were different standards, and it should have been one standard, National Restaurant Business Standards, and that's what we want to hold them to.
All right. So in this particular case, you hope that the question will be answered as to what, and then how will that ultimately change on the other side if you get a win? What will that look like that will be different to franchise owners?
Well, we got to think about, I've been out of the system now 10 years, so that's economically, that's a lot of money that, I was 54 years old, I wasn't trying to lead the system, and a lot of my peers the same way, they wasn't ready to lead the system. So there was a lot of lost revenues from those 10 years, so maybe the lawsuit maybe 6 years now. that, stuff money that we spend in our community. They did make some concessions to some of the current Black McDonald's operators to help them, but they didn't help some of the ones that were forced out because of the racist practices they use in terms of when you get a store, how hard you grade it, not being held at the same standards, moving the goal line on us so you can't get to the finish line because they kept moving it on us. So most of this is an economic ploy that we hope to help our communities, help our families, help our second generations because we didn't get that opportunity.
All right, I'm going to bring in the panel here. First, we have Teresa. A question for Van Jakes.
Hi,
yeah,
Teresa.
thank you so much for telling your story. Hey, Van, thank you so much for telling your story. One, it's unfortunate that you are going through this. Can you tell us how long you've been facing this discrimination and how long have you seen some of those issues that I'm sure you brought up to McDonald's about DEI rollbacks since the administration took place?
Well, it's been 6 years in our case, but when I was a McDonald's franchisee, we knew there was some racism going on. For example, I took over a store owned by two white operators, two restaurants. When I took him over, they graded me way harder than they graded him at the same restaurants, but he would always pass his visits, and I was having a hard time passing his visits, the same exact restaurants. But I would tell my managers, hey, fair is what you pay to get on the bus. Let's fix the system, let's fix the restaurant, let's keep it moving. But when you're talking about grand scale of economics, it's hard to fix an economic problem like that because I have a white operator who would actually come and testify that when they came in his stores, he would tell them just go ahead and get out because we're not going to do it. We didn't have that luxury. So it's been 6 years for us, and it seems like it's been 10 years really, but we continue to fight. We hope these two Black female executives get their day in court so they can get the discovery and get the true facts, and then we'll be next in line, hopefully, to do the same thing.
All right, Patrick.
Yeah, God bless you and your fight. My question is along the lines of, have you found much coalition building with other Black McDonald's franchisees who have experienced the same thing, or say that if I haven't experienced and you have experienced, then I'm going to lend my support to you? Or do you feel like, you're kind of on your own in this fight?
No, we've got a total of 70 Black operators. And when it started, it was like a Me Too movement. I thought it was just me. And then I raised my hand and another operator in Memphis said it was me too. And then it started like that, a groundswell. And then we had 40 of us here and 30 of us over there suing. We actually have some current Black operators who, I can't name them, but they can testify that they've seen the disparity between how they treated Black and white operators in different areas. Here in Atlanta, Georgia, for example, it was like 32 Black operators at one point. Now it's 11. And those numbers changed. The store count, maybe they gave the few of the Black operators more stores, but they left a lot of us on the sideline. And the way they did that by discriminating what stores we can get, how much we had to be invested in stores versus the white operators. So it was a mixed bag of how they kind of shook the system and kind of made it smaller.
That certainly is a big drop in numbers, and this is certainly a case that we are going to be following. Van Jakes, thank you for giving us insight about this case. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you guys having us.
All right, on to a little bit of retail. Afro Unicorn is the first Black-owned, woman-founded business to sell a licensed character in major retail. This is a big deal, folks. Tonight, April Showers is here to share her magical products with the Black Star Network family. Afro Unicorn offers everything from hair care to apparel, bedding, toys, and books. Afro Unicorn began with a very bold vision, and April joins us now. April, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This is such a magical evening to be here.
I see all of the magic in this adorable little creature. Tell me, how did all of this come? Because, licensing isn't something that's for the faint of heart. You obviously jumped into it, did well, and here you are with this amazing line of products.
So Afro Unicorn launched back in 2019. It was a print-on-demand company when I first launched it, just selling shirts and any items that I could get my hands on. And then it just progressed. When I launched it, it was launched as a women's empowerment brand because a friend kept calling me a unicorn. And I asked him, why do you keep referring to me as a unicorn? He said, well, April, you're running your businesses. I have an insurance agency. I'm a licensed real estate broker, and I'm a mother of 2 amazing boys. And he said, April, you're doing it. Like, you're killing it. You're a unicorn. I didn't know much about unicorns. I looked them up. I saw they were unique. They were mystical. I said, I'm definitely unique. I'm all things Black girl magic. So I started to use the emoji in our phones. Until one day it just hit me, like, why is it only white? Like, why is it that these characteristics only represent white? So I didn't like it. I went back out to go find a unicorn that looked like me. I couldn't find one. And so I decided to create it to be the change that I wanted to see, but then also to find my tribe of other women unicorns. So what started as a women's empowerment movement quickly grew into a children's representation brand as well. So I set it to empower, not even realizing that I was really changing the game on how children viewed themselves and the products that they see. And I'm the first Black woman to have a fully licensed character brand in major retail.
Wow. I mean, kids love unicorns. Talk to me about your journey into getting into licensing it, and then as well as getting it into major stores. Not an easy task.
No, it's not, but it's magical over here. So we definitely are not the norm. Afro Unicorn, when I first launched the brand, again, it was launched as a women's empowerment brand. So we had the likes of Tiffany Henyard, Alicia Keys, Sherry Shepherd, all these women that were rocking and wearing the brand. And then the children started to wear the brand. So then there was a video that went viral of a young girl wearing the shirt, and someone walked by her and said, I love your hair. And she said, thank you, it's an afro. So when she said that, the video just went everywhere. Months later, Oprah found it and they posted it on the Oprah Daily's page. And then the buyer at Walmart saw it and then reached out and said, hey, I'm missing this type of diversity on my shelves. I'm missing this type of grassroots organic brand on my shelves. And I would love to bring you in and introduce you to the licensing space. So when I say it was magical, it was definitely magical. And I was introduced and I was brought in. And once you're in the licensing space, it's a very small knit community. Everybody is like a 2 degree removed. And so they know everyone. So when you get with the party supply guy, and then he knows the underwear, and the underwear people know the hair accessories, and the hair accessories know the apparel. And then you start attending the licensing expos in Vegas, and you start making connections, and that's how it just keeps growing.
Yeah, and this is a really fine example of how you do business in the best way in terms of the marketing that you did, the opportunities that you took, and really the hole that you saw that actually needed to be filled. I want to jump to our panelists. Teresa, do you have a question for April? I'm sorry, Patrick.
First, I'd just like to say congratulations. That sounds absolutely amazing. What you're doing. I'm interested in what your vision is and how you're expanding it and how you are connecting with your core audience and broadening your audience.
Well, the biggest thing that we face as a licensed character brand is that we do not have a show behind us. So the biggest thing that we're trying to do to expand is to get that animated series. So we're working weekly on developing out the story for Afro Unicorn. We had a lot of bumps in the road with not having the right partners. So now I think we finally have the right people in place. And so we're working on just bringing that storytelling. I do have books. I am the author of 8 children's books. So there are stories available. You get to learn more about the unicorns, but kids want to see it on television. And I want to see it on TV too.
Yeah. And as we close, can you let me know a little bit of the backstory that's involved in how this Afro Unicorn in terms of the stories you've written. What types of stories would we see about this Afro Unicorn if it was a TV series? What's the backstory there of this unique unicorn?
The biggest backstory is belief, and knowing that believing in yourself is the greatest superpower of all. And once you know that you can, that is the superpower, like you can conquer everything. Like you might be able to sing, you might have the strength, you might have all these other shifter superpowers, but the key to Afro Unicorn is that they have to first believe that they can. So there'll be a lot of different challenges that they go through, but it always will go back to the core of believing in themselves.
Wow. April showers. Of course, I'm not going to lean into the obvious joke there, but April showers of Afro Unicorn.
April. You can lean into it. It is April. You can lean into it.
You bring what is it? April showers bring Mayflowers. There you go. Mayflowers. And you have a lot of flowers here with this brand. I want to thank you for just sharing with us this unique way of doing businesses, this licensing business, and hopefully someone is looking at the outside in and being inspired. Good to see you and good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I just want to say good night to everyone out there, but make sure to continue to stay with us as always anyway, but especially because we are talking about and dissecting and parsing domestic violence and dealing with ways of how to actually bring it to an end and address it in ways that we have never done it before. No one is doing it like we are doing it here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, on the Roland Martin Unfiltered Network, on the Black Star Network. Have a good night and see you tomorrow.